Hello, ladies and gentlemen. The video you're about to see is something that was originally uploaded to the YouTube channel of Just a Robot. This was something I did because I originally wanted to help his channel grow and stay active while he was occupied with other things. You know, before he decided to defend a groomer. So since I was able to get him to delete all my content from his channel and I will definitely not be supporting him anymore, I've decided to just try and start over on this channel for the people who are still interested in my content. I also want to make it clear before we go forward that this version of the video that was originally uploaded on his channel is going to be heavily edited. Not just because of the severity of the subject matter, but also to get rid of any parts of the video that shout out to Jar or encourage people to support his channel. Because I do not want to support or be associated with a pedophile apologist. With that said, enjoy the video.
But let's also try to keep it civil down there in the comment section. I know that's kind of a reach. It mightn't be impossible to be civil in the comment section, but hey, I bet we can pull it off.
Well. Looks like this particular video aged pretty badly. Now, if by some chance you're among the 5% of people on the internet that don't know about the drama surrounding this movie, I'll give you the quick version in just a moment. But first, let's give a warm round of applause for Tony Watley II for still being an irredeemable piece of shit 4 years later. Now, I know there's a lot of people watching this right now who are going to try and downvote this video or try stirring drama on Twitter out of spite just because they've already devoted so much of their life to hating me. But let's try not to make this about them. At least not right now. Instead, let's focus on caking in a revolting piece of softcore child porn and the pedo enablers and apologists who defended it. In late 2020, a French movie by the name of Mignons was released on Netflix, later given its international name Cuties, which... honestly, that alone sums up this movie better than I'm about to. It follows the story of a young girl torn between her traditional Muslim family values and seeking the freedom to express herself openly as she befriends a group of rebellious preteens who enter a dancing competition. By the end of the movie, the girl named Amy decides to fit herself into a middle ground, neither subjecting herself to her traditional family, nor does she overly express herself to an unhealthy level. She decides that she just wants to be a normal person with her own identity, and so she finds new friends to play jump rope with as the camera generically pans up to the sky. Now, on a surface level, this sounds like a reasonably safe movie about finding yourself and going against traditional family values to form your own identity. There was just one tiny little itsy-bitsy problem. The movie decided to feature the child actors in unapologetically sexually explicit scenes while having them dressed like this. And no, I am not kidding, this is literally how Netflix chose to market the film.
My eyes! Ah! The pain!
And sadly, the depravity didn't stop there. The movie's director, Maimouna Dokoué, aggressively pushed the idea that it was for the noble cause of raising awareness on how the media tries to influence and sexualize underage children by repeatedly directing these real 11-year-old girls to dance like prostitutes in a nightclub while wearing clothing that makes Kill la Kill's fan service look subtle in comparison, instead of, I don't know, casting 18 and 19-year-olds for the roles. It might have been one thing if this was just a single brief scene at the middle or end of the film to demonstrate the damaged development that was done to the girls from their exposure to adult media. But this depraved shit is plastered throughout the movie's entire 96-minute runtime. Scenes of the girls videotaping boys urinating in the men's bathroom, ironing their hair, blackmailing an adult with false accusations of child predation, inflating a condom like it's a balloon and wearing it under their shirt imitating a 4D-sized breast. One of the girls trying to bribe her cousin with sex before stealing his phone and snapping a picture of her private parts to post on social media, multiple scenes of twerking, and a final dance sequence so thoroughly revolting that I nearly threw up every scrap of food that I have ever eaten throughout my entire life. And these are all just from the top of my head.
Dear God.
There's more.
No.
Now, if you're a decent human being who doesn't deserve to be shot to death, your immediate reaction to this movie was that of revulsion. This was clearly softcore CP masquerading as a supposedly deep and thematic movie with important messages and life lessons. And they don't even do a good job of hiding it because of how in-your-face the sexualization of the 11-year-old actors are. It got to the point that an actual child predator came out to tell people that he liked the movie specifically because he had fantasies of the child actors while watching it. Anyone with functioning eyes and ears can see this abhorrent excuse for quote-unquote entertainment for what it actually was. This was a flip-handed excuse to showcase a movie featuring underage minors who can't consent to adults being sexualized to an alarming degree on a streaming service that will say yes to literally anything. This movie shouldn't have even been made at all without someone on the production team getting arrested because the contents of the movie is so incriminating that it actually breaks multiple laws, and the child actors in the movie didn't even meet France's age of consent, which is 15 years old. You have to be either a child predator or a contender for an FBI watch list to even consider having any positive feelings towards this movie. Because let's be real, if Maimona was white or a man when she made this movie, she would have been facing criminal charges for child abuse and thrown in prison the week this movie was released. But sadly, if you're even remotely familiar with who I am and the original video I made covering this topic, then you know the story doesn't end there. Around the time of the movie's release on Netflix, I made a video covering the absolute insanity that was the sick animals who believed this movie's existence was defendable on the basis of having a thought-provoking theme. The most infamous one being a video released by Black Critic Guy trying to make an argument for how it's somehow not a bad movie, even going so far as to say that it was the best movie he saw throughout that year.
No, 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 no. No, 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 no.
Now, you might be wondering why I'm trying to revive this topic from 4 years ago just to spite these people. Well, dear viewer, it doesn't matter if this was from 4 years ago or 5,000 years ago. The simple fact is, they defended CP. And now that the movie is no longer going to be on Netflix, it gives me the incentive to reflect on the failed attempts by its fans and defenders to justify it. A lot of you know the drill by now. People like Black Critic Guy and Sneeko and Movie Bob have tried to justify this by saying it raises awareness on how the media negatively influences kids and how it tries to sexualize them. But if you look deeper into the issue, you'll know that that is not at all why they felt the need to defend the movie. It's all just mountains of excuses to take a stab at the people who are very justifiably angry at this movie and Netflix's decision to support it, specifically so they can feel more comfortable with their stance on it. They actively like a movie that sexualizes real-life children, but they can't say that out loud without someone calling the police on them, so they had to stir up a bunch of stupid drama responding to the backlash to make it seem like it was all the work of reactionary Americans who didn't understand the deep and complex message the movie was trying to send. But how can we tell for sure that these were just excuses? By debunking them one by one, of course. Now, originally I was planning to include Sneeko and Snowpire's videos in this breakdown, but I can't really do that since their channels have been deleted, thank God. But Black Critic Guy's channel is still up for whatever reason, so I can still use his embarrassing video. So without further delays, let's get started in ripping this piece of shit apart. Let's get started with the description. This is the hardest video I had to make, but it's also one of my bests. I'm very proud of the work I put into it and hopefully it shows. Cuties has gotten a raw end of the deal, and being someone who likes to stand up for films and anime that get unjust hate, I thought I would throw my hat into the discussion and explain why Cuties is actually a great film. Oh boy, reading that out loud is already giving me PTSD of how bad the preceding shit in this video was. Let me tell ya, if you seriously have that much pride in defending a CP movie while believing this to be one of your best videos, you shouldn't be around school zones, fuckboy. Oh boy, the classic forced-tired sigh of the content creator in the first 0.2 seconds over an empty void to let you know how overwhelmed they feel in this video. When a video starts off like that, we're in for a wild ride.
This may be the hardest review I'll ever make. But it's also the most important review I have to do.
So according to you, this is basically your magnum opus and that there's nowhere else to go from here. Well, Tony, if you really believe that, why don't you just quit YouTube? I mean, come on, man, you defended CP, it can't possibly get better than that.
Cuties was awkward, uncomfortable, downright repulsive in many parts.
Much like this video, I'm sure.
But also poignant, daring, thoughtful, well executed, and dare I say, the best film I've seen in 2020.
Daring? Are you serious? It's not daring to put out footage of live children being sexually exploited, it's criminal. Thoughtful? Well, maybe to people like Mr. Girl, but not the rest of us. And of course, the best movie you've seen in 2020. I get that this is from before Soul and Wolfwalkers came out, but come on, there's no way you honestly believe this was the best movie of 2020 up to that point. What, was Trolls World Tour not doing it for ya? Oh, and by the way, this guy thinks Kung Fu Panda 3 was one of the worst movies of 2016.
The best film I've seen in 2020.
It's not that big a deal. Excuse me.
What?
Huh. Well, since you decided to use a hell of a boss clip to describe how your defense of this movie isn't a big deal, allow me to reciprocate with this hell of a boss clip.
Hey, dipshit! Want to see whose lap you're sitting on?
Yes, I honestly mean that. I understand you'll have a knee-jerk reaction to such a bold statement.
How is being upset with someone defending CP a knee-jerk reaction? Do you really not understand the severity of what you're saying? No shit people were gonna get mad, you fucking idiot. What did you think was gonna happen? That we would just congratulate you for being brave enough to get on the internet and speak up about your unpopular opinion? What are you, a Star Wars sequel trilogy fan? You just called a movie about 11-year-old girls being sexually exploited live on camera to be one of the best films of 2020. If that doesn't make you mad, you probably think Sneeko doesn't like children.
I'm talking about your personal beliefs. Someone in their 20s should be able to marry a 15 or 16-year-old.
Just say no, just say no, just say no, just say no.
To someone in their 20s should be, I mean, I personally wouldn't do it.
That doesn't sound like a no.
Anyone, do you think it's okay for anyone in their 20s, an adult, to marry a 15 or 16-year-old?
Just say no, just say no, just say no.
There was a marriage where the father consented and the daughter consented, and it was both good on both families and they wanted to do it. Why am I going to get involved? Why should we get the government involved?
I get the backlash towards the film and why it rubs people the wrong way. Shit, it rubbed me the wrong way when I first saw the poster too. I mean, a film about a bunch of 11-year-olds dressed provocatively and dancing sexually? What adult in their right mind wouldn't be appalled by such a premise?
And yet you're still defending this movie. That's pretty fucking gross of you.
And if that was the case, then everyone is right to hate Cuties. But it isn't. And therein lies the biggest problem with this backlash. It's based on a lie.
Based on what lie exactly? There's receipts all across the internet showing in full detail what this movie was doing. Even so, how exactly were people lying about why they were outraged by this film's premise? Can you read people's minds to see if they're lying? Do you think the footage was fabricated? The fact that you have to censor footage from the movie in order to monetize this review is a blatant contradiction to what you're saying.
Am I denying that the film has those elements? Absolutely not. They're in there and they are extremely hard to watch. But it's not what the film is about. It's part of the film, but not the entire premise.
Oh, so your argument is that because the sexual stuff is only in a couple of scenes, that it isn't CP, and that it's okay to like it for speaking up against sexualizing minors, while it's literally sexualizing minors. Also, are you saying this movie's plot somehow doesn't revolve around the kids parading themselves, even though that's the catalyst of the plot? That's like saying Saving Private Ryan isn't about the horrors of war because the Ohama Beach section only takes up 15% of the film's runtime. I mean, okay, let's try doing it your way for a moment. Let's say that this part of the film takes up like 12% of its runtime, and the other 88% is the coming-of-age stuff. You wanna know what the acceptable percentage of a movie's runtime sexualizing live child actors is? Fucking 0. 12% is way off from that mark.
So instead of doing a regular review condemning people for hating the movie without seeing it, or being an out-of-touch critic that scoffs at the mainstream audience for just not getting it,
Oh, be sure to keep this in mind for later because I guarantee you it's definitely gonna bite him in the ass.
I want to level with you guys. I want to show you another way to look at Cuties, to approach it differently.
Yeah, just approach the CP differently and you'll feel differently about it. Nice logic.
So, if you'll indulge me for a couple minutes or quite a few minutes, I'd like to break down the true intent with Cuties.
Hey guys, maybe we shouldn't be hard on that guy who tried to assassinate Donald Trump because he had good intentions. He just wanted to put an end to his reign of evil that's destroying America without thinking about the consequences of assassinating a presidential candidate.
The backlash towards Cuties is entirely Netflix's fault and no one else's. It was terribly and poorly marketed.
Ah yes, I remember it like it was yesterday how people tried defending the movie by bringing up that nonsense. Hey guys, it's not CP, Netflix just marketed it wrong with that horrible poster. If the final dance sequence is anything to go by, their marketing was very spot on. Honestly, it doesn't matter how you market a movie like this because there's no way around the fact that you're sexualizing live children. Even the toned-down French version of the poster was upfront about it. I mean, sure, it doesn't feature them dressed like prostitutes, but it still shows the children celebrating buying bras and panties and wearing that shit over their clothes, trying to draw attention to themselves in a way that would backfire very badly if this was taking place in somewhere like Nigeria, and it depicts a very real scene from the movie. If anything, I'm actually glad that Netflix used that poster when promoting the movie because it alerted the public to how disgusting it was going to be very early on. And he also tries to excuse this further by comparing what happened to the movie Drive, which is a really shitty false equivalent. First of all, Drive doesn't sexualize kids. Second, the trailer for Drive spoiled the majority of the movie's plot. The Cuties trailer didn't do that because the majority of key events were left out. If they did, I'm pretty sure the trailer would have been removed from YouTube for violating their community guidelines. Even the original plot synopsis Netflix put out before they had to change it, oh gee, I wonder why that could have been, was very straightforward about this being CP. This movie became CP the minute it was marketed as such. So what do you have to gain from trying to make it look like it was something else? I swear, you're like that guy who gets caught cheating on his wife and you go,
This isn't what it looks like?
So yes, while the over-sexualization is in the film, it, one, is not the main focus of the film. That would be Amy.
Did you really say in the same sentence that the sexualizing of the kids and their exposure to sexualized internet culture is in the movie, but also say that the film isn't about that? What is that argument even supposed to mean? Like, what are you saying? Are you trying to say that something is there, but also not there? This isn't a Zen riddle, it's fucking CP.
And two, it has a bigger, deeper point to the story.
How does sexualizing these kids serve any point for the story? It doesn't do anything except make the director look like she needs to get shot. There's literally a scene in the movie where the family performs an exorcism on Amy, and during the exorcism she's twerking and dancing like a stripper while the camera pans around her body, further sexualizing her. How did that add anything to the story or the development of the characters? That could have been cut out and you would lose nothing, like a lot of the other scenes of them parading themselves.
Whether you agree with this point, or think it's an excuse or a way to defend the film from any criticism, the fact is the film is clearly a commentary on how society is today.
Okay, so since when did freedom of speech have to break the law to teach people a life lesson?
But the not so obvious one is the state of parenting. In the film, we learn and see the family lives of 3 of the 5 cutie girls. Amy has a mother that is dealing with her own problems, and so is not involved in her daughter's life. She has an auntie that is ultra conservative and follows the old ways to the book, and really doesn't care to learn about Amy or kind of bond with her or to understand what she's going through. And she has a father that's somewhere else marrying another woman. He's just not there for her in any way, shape, or form in the film. Angelica, Amy's only friend in the film, has parents who are too busy working all the time to spend any quality time with her. And finally, Yasmin, the big girl of the group, has an oblivious mother who's completely unaware of what her daughter and her friends are doing, especially in the house. It's safe to assume that the other 2 girls also have parents that don't bother with what they're doing or aren't around that much. So we have clear examples of parents who are neglectful or absent in their children's lives. This clear lack of parenting could be the very reason why these girls are acting out in the first place.
So what you're saying is this movie is a completely unoriginal coming-of-age story that does nothing to stand out from the crowd, except abuse children in its production. Is this really your way of defending the movie? It can't be CP because it has a plot? I could care less about what the context behind this is, because a team of adults are still filming children's bodies and nether regions while dressed in skimpy clothes, dancing in ways that they shouldn't be dancing.
This clear lack of parenting could be the very reason why these girls are acting out in the first place. They're seeking attention. Since they're not getting attention at the house from their parents, they will find attention elsewhere and find new means to get that kind of attention, whether it be positive or negative.
And you do realize that kids do other things for attention that don't involve sexualizing themselves.
And it stands to reason that if they put more effort into their parenting, their daughters wouldn't act or dress the way that they do in the film.
So you're basically saying that it's the fault of the parents for Amy and the cuties being detestable shits throughout the movie for not giving them enough attention. Dude, Amy did all that shit herself. She blackmailed an adult with false accusations of child predation. She tried to bribe her cousin with sex. She stole his phone and took a picture of her vag to post on social media. She pushed someone into a river trying to kill them just to take their spot in a dance group. No one forced her to do that. If I get caught stealing from a video game store, the police aren't gonna let me go if I sell them the story that my dad didn't hug me enough as a kid.
Children are looking up to celebrities and social influencers rather than their parents or family members. They're learning how to behave and how to act from the media that they are digesting and watching on a daily basis.
And notice how the examples he's using to make his point don't feature sexualization or provocative dancing. That's it. That's the answer right there. The media that influences the kids in the film could have been non-sexual. The story could have stayed the same while safely excluding the predatory content. Was it really that hard?
Now, do not get it twisted, ladies and gentlemen. I am not saying blame celebrities or social media or movies and video games for influencing our kids. I believe artists have every right to express themselves the way they see fit.
And that is precisely why we have shit like Velma.
Parents should teach their kids what is appropriate and what is not. It's not the media's job to raise your kids, so stop letting them and be more involved in your kids' lives. To me, this is the biggest takeaway from Cuties. We need to be better parents for our kids.
Wow, really? Who would have ever thought that if kids are left unattended by their parents, they'll seek influences from media? Good thing we had this CP to tell us that. Just imagine where society would be without that knowledge. I mean, it's not like this was common knowledge for hundreds of years before the movie was even a sperm in someone's mind. Oh wait, if that was the case, then human civilization would have already collapsed. Tony, you're not helping. This can be done in literally any other way than asking a bunch of 11-year-old girls to shake their booties for the camera and get in these outfits and lick their palms or fingers while rubbing their crotches so we can put it in our movie. Oh, don't worry, I'm not a sex trafficker, I'm a Netflix producer. Oh, and don't use the excuse that it's a different situation with every family, because universally, any good parent would be appalled if they knew their 11-year-old kids were doing the stuff portrayed in the movie.
The over-sexualization of teens and adolescents.
They're not even teens, they're 11 years old. For someone who wants to make a point to people who got outraged at the movie without even seeing it, I'm getting the impression that you didn't watch it by the way you're talking about it.
I personally find it weird that everyone is all up in arms and angry about a film that addresses the issue honestly and directly.
Oh, honestly and directly, because this bitch understands the human mind so well.
Rather than the issue itself. It's a very kill the messenger scenario.
But the messenger made the CP in the first place. That's something that people should direct their anger at. Whether or not it was done as part of social commentary is a moot point. My guy, I've seen my fair share of social commentary in movies, TV shows, and video games, and none of them featured an 11-year-old girl twerking for any period of fucking time.
They shouldn't be directing it towards cuties. It should be towards those who actually sexualize teens for ratings and profits.
That is exactly what you're doing with this movie. And it's also what the director did when she made this movie and had it put on Netflix. This is an irony. This is running into New York Public Square with a sign over your head saying, "I profited off child exploitation to teach people about the evils of child exploitation."
And yes, I won't deny it was very uncomfortable watching these little girls grinding and twerking and talking about sex. But you know what? Sometimes the truth is uncomfortable.
Oh, and for that it was totally okay to abuse these kids in a sexual manner. Wow, that is unbelievable. Hey Tony, if you have a daughter, would you like for them to be sexually exploited for millions of adults to see? If it helps to expose an uncomfortable truth in our society? I honestly hope to God that you never have kids or adopt any kids, because that is such a freaky statement to make about the movie you're standing by right now. If your argument is that the movie is supposed to make you uncomfortable, then what do you really make of the poster that Netflix used to market the movie? The same one you said made you feel disgusted and appalled when you first saw it. The double standards are not helping you.
What Cuties is a reflection of the real world and its unsettling truths.
No, it's just hypocritical. This movie is the equivalent of those female dancers who talk about how they don't like being objectified by the media or general public when she's the one getting on stage dressed in shorts 5 inches above her knees and shaking her ass like a plate of jello.
And to set the record straight, this film does not, I repeat, does not glorify, nor condone, nor approve of the over-sexualization and behavior of the cutie girls portrayed in the film.
Actually, it does. It's clearly glorifying just by explicitly focusing on it and using pervasive cinematography. Did you just forget that you have to censor the footage to monetize the video? If Cuties was against the exploitation of children, you wouldn't be seeing the 11-year-old actors doing the same thing you see the adults doing in those nightclubs. There's a scene of Amy butt-tapping one of the girls while the one with the glasses is twerking next to her while she's doing it, and you're telling me this isn't glorifying the behavior of the characters? You know, when I said earlier that you didn't see the movie, I was being sarcastic, but now I'm really convinced you didn't watch it if you got something this obvious this wrong.
If anything, the film deliberately goes out of its way to paint the cutie girls in the worst way imaginable.
Okay, so the characters are selfish little shits. That doesn't mean the movie isn't glorifying the manner in which the director is exploiting them. The footage is still highlighted strongly throughout the film.
The negative impact they had on Amy as a character, who begins the film rather wholesome, maybe a little naive, but a good person. But the moment she starts spending more time with the cutie girls and getting assimilated into their ways, you start to see how she's changing for the worse. She has a bad attitude. She's not taking care of her brother. She doesn't help her mother when she falls down on the ground, clearly exhausted or sick. She just scoffs and is like, whatever, I don't care about you. Or the fact that she stabs a kid in class and pushes a girl into the river and watches her drown, not even helping her. She's lucky that that mysterious buoy pops out of nowhere to save her life. If that didn't, she would have just watched that girl drown and not even help or anything.
Well, I'll give you credit for doing a good job highlighting how Amy is a horrible person, but peer pressure isn't a good enough excuse for her behavior. Peer pressure doesn't make you commit first-degree murder, you're just a psychopath.
Cuties is also a brilliant deconstruction of the coming-of-age story we've seen in a lot of films.
Oh, I'm sorry, I must have missed the scene in the Breakfast Club where the gang started twerking and stripping down, because what kind of coming-of-age story has glorified sexual content in it?
It's what I like to call a bad coming-of-age story. Not bad as in quality, bad as in type. Imagine it, if you will, as a visual novel. It has good routes and bad routes. And it really dawned on me that most of the coming-of-age stories that I have seen in theaters or that I've read or learned about, they tend to be overly positive. A kid meets the right group of people or chooses the right path and becomes a better person by the end. Cuties, on the other hand, is a case of taking the bad route.
But Amy takes the good route and gets the good ending at the end of the film anyway, so it's not even subversive or original by giving her a sad ending.
It should go without saying, since I've already spent a majority of this video praising it, but the film's biggest strength is the writing. I found the storytelling refreshing and daring, the characters complex and genuine, and the themes and commentary honest, bold, and well executed.
In spite of having some of the most cliche and overused shit in a movie while doing nothing fresh or subversive with it? Oh look, the kid feels pressured by their traditional family and wants to be different while seeking something more in life. Oh look, a kid seeking popularity at school gets mixed up in a bad crowd, leading to her getting in trouble with her family and peers. Oh look, a girl starts off wanting to exploit her body for attention, and by the end of the story she realizes it's a self-destructive lifestyle. How original.
For a first-time director and writer, Maimouna Dukure's direction was masterful, getting exactly what she needed from her actresses.
Oh yeah, she got exactly what she needed from the child actors to make this movie appeal to its intended audience. You freak.
I especially love Fathia Yusuf's performance as Amy. She had the toughest role to pull off, being both sympathetic yet despicable while carrying this film, and she pulled it off like a pro.
No, I'm sorry, but Amy is a shit character, and from what I've seen, the actress is mediocre at best. And I honestly find it odd that your section of the video focusing on the greatness of Cuties isn't even 60 seconds long. You couldn't even make it a full minute. Honestly, I think he's actively avoiding talking about the bulk of the story and the character arcs on purpose to avoid people calling him out on his nonsense. Like he knows that if he covers more of what happens in the movie, then viewers will further be turned off by his crap. It's like an episode of Nostalgia Critic that way.
I think my brother put it best when I talked to him about this film, when he said that despite all that the film portrayed and showed, it is clearly a work of art.
Your brother is as much of a sick fuck as you, and quite frankly, he shouldn't be around school zones either.
We normally get a knee-jerk reaction to films that challenge us, films that are quite unique and different or go against the grain, or say something about our society that we're not willing to embrace or accept at the time. And when a film can make you question many things and have an onslaught of different opinions, emotions, and feelings, that in its essence is a work of art.
Nope, fuck you. I would sooner die before ever accepting this movie as a work of art. What is actually wrong with you? I mean, what are you going on about? This movie challenged you? It said something about society you didn't embrace or accept before seeing it? It made you question things while having a slew of different feelings on the topic? Are you actually inferring that you didn't know it's wrong to sexually exploit live children for a movie or a dance competition before seeing this thing?
All units, we have a code red. Do not attempt to move or we'll be shooting ourselves.
Because works of art are supposed to bring things like that out of people. They're supposed to make them question what they just witnessed. Make them ponder over and over about how the film, how the work made them feel.
Art is not supposed to send toxic and horrible messages, or try to manipulate the audience into empathizing with horrible people and ideas, or, you know, break federal laws. Cuties did all three of these things.
And that's what Cuties did to me. It made me ask a lot of questions. It made me feel a variety of emotions. But at the end of the day, I can't deny that it did something very unique, something I don't see mostly. It challenged my perspective on certain things, and I actually appreciated the experience that Cuties gave me.
Oh my god, he's being serious. He's actively admitting that he didn't know any better. Alright, what exactly did the movie make you question, Tony? What things did it challenge your perspective on? You never tell us what those things are or what those questions were, so what are we supposed to take away from that after all the sick stuff you said to defend this movie? Do you actually like kids that way? Because if you're still standing by the things you said in this review 4 years later, that's the only other conclusion I can come to other than you being cosmically stupid. Oh yeah, it's so revolutionary to make a movie telling us that something obviously bad is obviously bad. I never would have guessed that before watching Main Mona Dokuei's Cuties. Clearly I need to be told by this film that adults should not be grooming kids for sex or not letting kids be influenced by sexual media. It changed my entire outlook on life.
Really?
No.
I honestly find it so funny that Amy's mother and her conservative family are treated as the villains of this movie when apparently they already knew this shit before the fuckers who defended this movie did.
But I won't forget the experience it gave me, the lessons it taught me.
I rest my case.
Whether you agree with that notion or not, the one thing I do want you to take away from this video is that I feel as though the hate for Cuties was completely unwarranted. And it's the classic example of judging a book by its cover. People immediately condemn the movie without giving it a chance to tell its story and to be judged objectively and fairly.
Okay, so remember that clip I said to remember for later because it would come back to bite him in the dick? At the beginning of the video, you said you didn't want to come across as one of those snooty know-it-alls who scoffs at the general public for just not getting it. But you've spent the entire video defending it from the backlash it received, claiming that the haters just don't get it. Your main defenses have been to say, oh, the negative reception was a knee-jerk reaction. You blame it on bad marketing. You don't understand that this movie is an intelligent deconstruction of parenting and how we let the media influence the lives of our kids. And now you're trying to talk down to people who had the correct reaction to this very obvious CP. Talking about some, oh, we didn't judge it objectively and fairly. What, are you saying that child exploitation is somehow misunderstood? This gotta be the most Billy Utonium IQ shit I've ever seen. No, Tony, the movie was received objectively and fairly by the people who were disgusted by it, because that is the morally correct response you're supposed to have to something like this. This movie deserves every single bit of hate it got for the way it openly abused these kids on camera.
And if you still don't want to see it because of the over-sexualizing of the children, then I completely understand that.
Oh, you think?
Just so long as you can understand why I think it's great.
Because you're EDP455's cousin, I bet.
Cuties is a superb film that takes an honest, hard look at our society, from the internet culture that is influencing our children to the degradation of parenting.
Both of which have been done in hundreds of other stories without being dog shit. You disgusting sack of cancer.
It's supported by solid direction.
If you're related to Bill Cosby maybe, but the rest of us? Hard pass.
Stellar, raw performances, and strong writing.
Oh please, I've seen episodes of Caillou with more intellectual writing. And Tony? Yes. I honestly mean that.
Make sure to comment below and let me know how you felt, not only about this video, but also of Cuties the film. Did you agree with everything I had to say, or some of the things I had to say? Do you disagree with it entirely? Do you feel like I'm reaching? Do you think that it's still about over-sexualizing children? Just let me know what you guys have to say, but let's also try to keep it civil down there in the comment section. I know that's kind of a reach. It might be impossible to be civil in the comment section, but hey, I bet we can pull it off.
Well, if there's one thing I can give this creep for, it's that he was brave enough to leave the comment section open for us to dogpile him. In fact, just to be generous, here's a Hall of Fame moment from my original video covering this garbage.
That's kind of a reach. It mightn't be impossible to be civil in the comment section, but hey, I bet we can pull it off.
That's priceless.
Oh man, that was so much worse than I remember. Even after 4 years, I still stand by what I said the first time, that this is the single most tone-deaf analysis of a work of fiction I've ever seen. Tony isn't just reaching, he is stretching in order to think of anything he believes will get people on his side, constantly downplaying the issue of the movie sexualizing live children without doing anything to send its message. Having a quote-unquote message about how it's bad to sexualize children and how we should pay attention to the media they consume does not make it any better. It doesn't magically make this all okay because you ham-fisted a happy ending saying, child exploitation is bad, media corrupts impressionable minds, pay attention to your kids. If anything, it makes it worse, because the director and filmmakers were fully conscious of what they were doing and never once stopped to think, hey, maybe we should just do a documentary on this topic? This is the equivalent of raising awareness on pollution by dumping acid into the ocean. It doesn't make a good point, and it actively glorifies the thing it's supposedly against. This is not social commentary. This is just being the thing. People believe this movie is trying to make a point about children being wrongfully exposed to adult media and how the media is trying to sexualize kids. But did they ever stop to think they did this in all the wrong ways? Why would you teach people that child exploitation is bad by exploiting children yourself? You can't possibly be looking at the footage of this movie and repeatedly think to yourself, how poignant. I understand how the media is corrupting the minds of children and grooming them into being sexualized. And we as adults must take a stand to ensure we're being responsible enough to teach our kids to not be influenced by these things and avoid going down this dark path. Unless you're a pedo apologist or a predator. And it would have been easier if the only people trying to excuse this movie were just a few YouTube reviewers with screws loose. But this ended up going beyond the platform. Around the time of the controversy, a bunch of sick and repulsive animals on Twitter, because it's always Twitter, banded together to fight against the outrage and negative reception this movie was receiving. And I don't mean just a few bad eggs or some die-hard Black Critic Guy fans. Oh no, Twitter became a fucking hive mind of pedo apologists and possible predators trying to cause a big stink, acting as if a huge majority of people on the internet being more than upset by the fact that Netflix promoted and endorsed very real softcore CP was some kind of act of discrimination. And what makes it even worse is that 99% of them practically echo the same arguments ad nauseum, to the point that debunking them couldn't be any easier if I wanted it to be.
You can't have an opinion on this movie because you didn't see it.
Ha! Yes, I can because it's CP.
This is some sort of right-wing conservative movement.
Oh, really? You're trying to turn the ethics of child sexualization into a political issue? This is exactly why I hate the left so much, because that's the excuse they always reach for when something they like receives backlash.
It's supposed to be shocking and make you feel uncomfortable.
So you're admitting the director only did this for attention?
You can't handle the reality or truth of the situation.
Oh, like I need some privileged Hollywood bimbo to teach me anything.
It won a Sundance Award and got positive reviews from professional critics.
Really? Who gives a fuck if this movie won a meaningless award? That's like saying Mass Effect 3 has an amazing story because it won some gaming awards and got a bunch of 10 out of 10s from some no-name gaming journalists.
It's raising awareness on something that should be called out.
I just decimated a whole ass video that made the same excuse, so this one speaks for itself.
Why aren't you getting angry at dance moms or toddlers and tiaras for doing the same thing?
Because dance moms and toddlers and tiaras was not the topic of discussion when it came to the backlash this movie was getting. You sick freaks were just trying to make it that way by shifting attention towards them because the negative reception towards this movie was making you feel uncomfortable.
It's outrage cancel culture by hysterical reactionaries.
How the fuck is it cancel culture to boycott a movie that sexually abuses live children? Who wouldn't be outraged about that? Oh, right, you sick freaks. These people are so desperate to take every element of the film they believe to be good and use it to outweigh the child sexualization. With scenes like this, and this, who on God's green earth do you think this movie was supposed to appeal to?
This film does try to make you sexually aroused by 11-year-olds. And I'll say it's not bad at it.
This brings me around to something I mentioned in the beginning. At the time of this recording, Netflix announced that the movie would be removed from their platform, and as of September 2024, it would no longer be accessible. I'm sure a lot of people are seeing this as an act of redemption for Netflix and praising that the movie is finally being taken down and things will go back to normal. But the thing is, they won't. You might be thinking that it's great that Cuties is being removed from Netflix and that will be the end of it. But the truth of the matter is, this goes beyond the issue of the movie being on the platform. To put it in a familiar phrase, it's too late. The damage is done. A lot of people think the issue lies in the movie being accessible on Netflix and the ethics of them endorsing it. But the truly damaging part of this entire situation was that people felt the need to have this discussion at all. This conversation was supposed to begin and end with "this movie is softcore CP." But here's the thing. People like Black Critic Guy, Sneeko, Movie Bob, and the sick animals whose tweets I just showed you didn't want it to end there. They wanted to feel special by going against the popular opinion and the outrage towards Netflix's decision to defend it and voice their personal point of view on the movie. So in order to do that, they had to twist the narrative to make it look like the sexualization of the child actors wasn't a problem. They wanted their 60 seconds of fame by going on the internet and speaking in defense of something that was universally despised because they think it makes them look smarter, or as if they have a deeper understanding of the subject matter. And this is where the mask comes off with these sick freaks. Their priorities were not in the issue of whether or not it was unethical for Maimona Dokoe to do the things she did when making this movie. Their priority was using this situation as an excuse to boost their ego. They know this shit is CP. They know this shit is illegal. They know Netflix did extremely disgusting and sickening things when defending this movie. And they don't care. Remember this line from Sneeko's original video covering this movie in which he says,
"Thing about Cuties is it's not an unrealistic film. Like, yes, it shows children in a sexual way, but this is not unusual now."
I'll give you about 10 seconds to figure out exactly what's wrong with that. Alright, so for those who didn't figure it out, here's the answer. There should not be a but in that sentence. The movie shows children in a sexual way, that's it. That's where all of this should have ended. But no, these cocksuckers wanted to feel special and stand out from the crowd so bad. So they made up all this unbridled nonsense to keep the conversation going just because they wanted to boast about how they're smarter than the people who reacted negatively to it. And I know this because since the upload of my original video, it just got so much worse. This is a cunt by the name of Khadija Mabowi, who uploaded a video defending the movie half a year after the height of the outrage passed by. She tries to take advantage of how the majority of people got bored of the drama to convince more people in her audience that it was all just a case of American outrage culture, and the arguments she uses throughout the video are practically identical to those used by Black Critic Guy, Sneeko, MovieBob, and the Sick Animals on Twitter, claiming that the movie exposes an uncomfortable truth in our society.
It has always been much easier, because it has always seemed much safer, to give a name to the evil without than to locate the terror within. And yet, the terror within is far truer and far more powerful than any of our labels. What the movie Cuties was asking us to do, if we paid enough attention, was to confront the terror within, not just berate the evil without. Because for some of us, it was a lot easier to look at Netflix and the film's director, Maimouna Dukure, and label them as grooming child predators who should be put in jail.
Suggesting that your criticisms towards the movie are invalid if you're not in a specific ethnicity or background or age group.
I'm also going to just talk about what this film meant to me as a Gambian Muslim child of immigrants growing up in the Western world, because I think what you're going to find out in this video, maybe some of you are going to realize that this film wasn't for you.
Scoffing people who criticized it for just not getting it.
And that's why maybe some of you didn't get it. Maimouna was speaking to young girls, yes, but she was speaking to young girls through her lived experience. Her lived experience has a lot of very interesting intersecting identities that some of y'all just were not gonna get.
Proclaiming that anger and revulsion was an inappropriate response to the material featured in the movie.
Why do you want to be mad? Why do you just want to stay mad? Why? Why?
Acting condescending to people who are rightfully concerned that the video maker is trying to speak in defense of CP.
Why stay mad when you can stay peaceful, when you can have your mind changed or opened or a new perspective? Maybe your mind isn't even changed, but you're just like, I didn't think about it in that way. Why not? Let's try it. Why not watch something by someone you don't agree with, and instead of letting the emotional charge of anger incite you to leave a hate comment, because at the end of the day, you're just helping my video with the algorithm, so do it if you want to, but I'm just trying to help you out. Why not just watch the video with an open mind, a somewhat open heart, because it's harder to open our hearts, I get it, and our minds actually, but try it.
Insisting that it can't be bad because it got positive reviews from critics while winning a Sundance Award.
But either way, in 2017, the screenplay for Cuties was finished, and it actually won a Sundance Global Filmmaking Award, which allowed her to develop it into a movie. It premiered at Sundance 3 years later, in January of 2020, to mostly positive reviews.
The aforementioned blame on American outrage or cancel culture.
The backlash came later, in the culture war capital of the world, the United States.
Shifting the blame on Netflix's bad marketing.
Because Netflix was really part of the problem. Here is the original French poster. Here is Netflix's poster. And then here is Netflix's synopsis. Ami, 11, becomes fascinated with a twerking dance crew. Hoping to join them, she starts to explore her femininity, defying her family's traditions. Who wrote this? Who wrote this?
Trying to tell people that the plot synopsis is inaccurate and doesn't represent the overall movie.
And immediately going off of all of this based off of a poster and a synopsis that weren't actually even accurate to the film.
Downplaying the response by saying it was all part of a typical hate train.
I was really disappointed as well, like I said, when I was on YouTube watching all of this happen, because so many people were just jumping on the clicks and views bandwagon of bashing it, not knowing, again, what the movie was actually about.
Trying to use the supposedly well-written story and character arcs and themes as a means to outweigh the child sexualization.
This was the first time in my entire 29 years on this earth that I have watched a film that I was like, I see myself 100% in this character. I have never watched a film and been able to do that. I've seen parts of myself, sure, but I've never watched a movie and been able to really be like, oh, I get this. I get Ami as a character. All of the little details as well of the older women at the mosque talking to her about what it is to be her duty. I remember so many little details of that. Even getting to watch a movie where, yeah, I had the subtitles on because I don't speak French, but I could understand the Wolof and being able to see something like that in a mainstream sort of way. It just really meant a lot to me. It did a lot for me.
Arguing that Maimuna Dokoway was justified in objectifying children for the sake of the film's message.
And that's what Maimuna, if you watch interviews of her, she's so serious about this. She's like, young girls, young kids in general, but young girls too, imitate what they see.
Claiming that the movie doesn't glorify the behavior of the Cuties girls because of some undertone that this behavior is bad.
There are a lot of really good moments in the film as well that let you know that this is not okay.
Hiding behind the excuse of there are kids in real life who act like this.
But I also think about the responsibility of that and treading lightly because kids imitate adults. Because a film is told from the perspective of an 11-year-old. From the perspective of an 11-year-old, they're not thinking manslaughter. They're thinking, this teenage boy rejected me and I'm sad about it. A lot of people that, it's like the minute you hit 20 or something, or 25, you forget that you were once a kid and had to navigate this world, and it's very difficult.
Trying to shift attention towards things like dance moms or toddlers and tiaras or other forms of American media that objectify kids.
And I hate to be the one to say it, but we don't think twice when grown folks playing teenagers on TV shows are having sex because they're adults, but they're still playing teenagers. We're still watching the implications of teens having sex, no matter how old the actors are.
Regurgitating the rebuttal that you can't have an opinion on this obvious CP if it's not in your watch history.
And especially not having seen it, some even encouraging people not to even bother seeing it, that the poster was enough for them to know that it was a bad film, and it was like, no, 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 oh God, what? Mm-mm.
It's like a depressing game of bingo, you guys. Just like everyone else who defended this movie, Khadija just wanted to sound smart and believed she was sharing her professional opinion about the themes featured in the film. And she used the Cuties fiasco as an excuse to project her ego onto anyone watching the video. She clearly did not care about the well-being of the child actors. She just wanted attention to convince people that she's such a smart and deep thinker.
The film itself and the outrage, the moral panic machine of being upset with a movie that you never even got to see, immediately thinking, oh, because children are being displayed in this way, because again, Netflix really fucked up, because children are being seen in this way, of course we're not going to watch it. And it really disheartens me because I feel like there could have been really interesting conversations like the one I'm trying to have with myself and my camera right now. There could have been really interesting conversations about what it means to have this wave of sexual liberation and feminism and stuff. What does that trickle-down effect have on children?
If you had an ounce of decency, you would like to reach through the computer screen and punch this woman in the face every time she tried to justify this vile. But the comments section, for whatever ungodly reason, is filled with pedo apologists and so forth, celebrating how brave she was for coming out and giving us a different point of view on this filth. I mean, just look at some of this garbage. Seriously, all the good people we lost to COVID-19 and these abominations ended up surviving. How on God's green earth do you defend the fact that very real actual 11-year-old minors were objectified, dressed up in skimpy clothes, directed to dance like strippers, have their bodies and private parts filmed and focused on by a team of adults, and not feel the need to vomit and question how far human society has devolved? It does not matter what it was trying to say about our society. This film is nothing to be justified for. None of the explicit imagery in this movie was a coincidence or an accident. It was purposefully shot by adults. The kids were filmed sexually by the choice of an adult. This movie is CP and should be banned from circulation. Period. And before any disgusting pigs try to go into the comment section and go, well, what have you ever done to help or protect children being sexually abused? For your information, I did do something to protect a minor who was sexually abused. Twice. I actually tried to send $1,000 of my own money to them and help them move out of an abusive household. So I am very familiar with the harsh realities this movie tried and failed to commentate on. And if you really think we need a movie that discusses the topic of media influencing and sexualizing minors, do it in a way that doesn't require minors to do the same thing on camera. It could have been an animated movie that gets the message across without actually objectifying live children. It would still be gross, but at least that way no real-life children would have been asked to get on camera and do this stuff. Was it truly the only way Main Mona could have gone about getting her message across? Was there really no other alternative she could have taken when she decided to make a movie covering this subject? If your answer to that is no, you're just reaching for excuses like the rest of these freaks. And I get that it's really easy for people to just say, well, Netflix is taking it down now, so it doesn't matter anymore. Actually, it does. Did Netflix ever issue an apology for defending this movie? Did they ever second guess their decision to promote and endorse it? Should it really have taken 4 years for them to remove it? Well, the answer to all those questions is no. Whatever reason Netflix has for removing Cuties from their servers, it's certainly not for their moral values. My guess is that the movie had a 4-year contract that's coming to an end, so they had to remove it out of obligation. If the reason for removing Cuties was morally motivated, it wouldn't have taken them 4 years to do so. This is the company that said Gone with the Wind was too inappropriate for their platform, yet they think this was okay. No, Netflix's stance on this movie was financially motivated. They wanted to appear as being on the side of people who were defending this movie because they didn't want to upset them into dropping their Netflix subscriptions. They didn't want to receive backlash from the left-leaning groups of people who believed this movie was a good thing, and the fact that the 11-year-old actors were objectified in the process of making it didn't factor in at all. It was a cheap tactic to stir controversy and earn viewership through the drama and profit off the situation for themselves. Netflix is a grotesque corporation that used child exploitation as a means to make money, which is wrong at every possible scale of resolution. Everyone who canceled their Netflix subscription and demanded other people do the same in light of this incident was completely in the right to do so, because something like that should not be forgiven. And even that was twisted for the self-gain of stupid people. When it was brought to their attention that a bunch of people were boycotting Netflix and wanted them to lose money for something they should lose money for, the cartoon community went into a panic over how this would affect their personal media consumption. Here's one asswipe who tried to use this very serious situation as an excuse to spurge about how awesome glitch tech is. He's scared of Netflix going out of business because that means he won't be able to watch any of their cartoons anymore, and a lot of other people in the cartoon community shared the same sentiment with Tune for Thought, because the cartoon community is made up of complete fuckheads with the worst priorities ever. Yeah, who cares that Netflix promoted and endorsed CP? What about my cartoons? Oh, but Saeed, you're starting to direct your anger at the wrong people. It's not their fault Netflix promoted and endorsed CP. Well, true, it's not, but that doesn't seem to be something they care about. Netflix did something deeply abhorrent, so of course people were going to boycott them. But the cartoon community was worried about Netflix losing money and going out of business because that meant they would no longer be able to watch Klaus, or Over the Moon, or Green Eggs and Ham, or The Michelles vs. the Machines, and spam that stupid animationist cinema meme every 2 minutes. So they tried to discourage people from boycotting the company and canceling their subscriptions, just to stop people from talking about the ethics of giving financial support to a company that supports CP. Their viewership of cartoon movies and TV shows was put in jeopardy, which was something that mattered more to them than the very real damage Cuties was causing. They just wanted the outrage to die out so they could go back to watching cartoons in peace, which tells you exactly where their priorities were. And you might say, oh, every company does shitty stuff. Why does that mean we can't have our streaming services? Are you gonna boycott Disney because of that story of someone dying from an allergy reaction in their restaurant while bragging about having the family's money from their Disney Plus subscriptions? Why does Netflix endorsing CP mean we can't have fun? Because fun is not more important than basic human decency, you fucking dipshits. And even that wasn't the end of it, because it wasn't enough for YouTubers and Twitter users to keep this conversation that should have ended as soon as the trailer dropped going. Even news outlets and big-name celebrities were defending Cuties. And knowing that news outlets and celebrities are trying to justify this movie is actually very scary. And for what? Because Cuties has social commentary in it? So now it's okay to objectify minors on camera if it has social commentary hooked to it? That is really sickening. This ultimately leads me back to something that I briefly mentioned near the start of the video. And that was the matter of people asking me this question. Why are you bringing back drama over a movie that came out 4 years ago? Because this is something that should never be forgotten. It's very likely that Netflix removing Cuties is part of their plan to sweep this under the rug, because now that the movie has outlived its contract, they can just get rid of it with no convenience. People will assume this was an apology for defending it and will eventually just forget about this whole thing like nothing ever happened. Call me crazy if you like, but I don't think the fact that this company defended a movie where 11-year-old girls were filmed grinding their crotches with their hands is something that should be silently swept under the rug, because the large plethora of people who tried defending it is something very alarming that people should be waking up to. The people who defended this obvious CP movie didn't simply defend it. They were highly enthusiastic about it. They were excited. They were expressive. They were embracive of what they were doing. They looked at the grotesque footage that made it into the film and went, "Come on everybody, let's have an open-minded discussion about how Cuties explore sexual liberation and society's approach to feminism and how media influences children, and share our different points of view and opinions like adults." If you're an adult defending a movie where 11-year-olds are being filmed doing very adult things that aren't suited for their age, you need to be either investigated by the FBI or shot. And people are treating this like typical internet drama that we should just move on from. No. We should not move on from Cuties and the people who defended it. You can't even make the argument that this is a cartoon where it's like, oh, they're just drawings on someone's computer and it didn't involve real-life children in its creation, so it's not hurting anybody. No, these were living, breathing minors. Reality. It actually happened. Am I speaking in an alien language when I explain this to people? There is a very real movement going on to normalize the concept of adults being allowed to have sex with kids. This movie is acting at the helm of that movement, and none of you seem to give a fuck. Remember, it's not just random weirdos on YouTube or Twitter or the news defending it. It's also Hollywood celebrities with large platforms for manipulating people. Society has actually gotten to a point that it's willing to defend sexualizing live children and the real damage it would cause them. And they're willing to do it out in the open without covering up their faces or doing anything else to hide their identities. All because this creature wanted to make a gross exploitation film, which isn't even well written by the way, and because a streaming service that will say yes to literally anything thought it would be a good idea to feature it on their servers. All under the excuse of, oh, but it reveals an uncomfortable truth in our society. And when I tell people that Netflix should be boycotted over that, they're really quick to go, but it's wrong to take down Netflix just because of this one movie. It was just one mistake. You moron, this was no mistake. The people at Netflix knew what they were doing when they said yes to this movie. They saw live children being sexually exploited and said, let's give millions of adults around the world full and easy access to this content. Netflix making the conscious choice to back up this movie is a definitive reflection on what they are as a company. Just another piece of garbage corporation that's willing to throw away basic human decency in exchange for increasing the size of their big piles of money. I have no sympathy for that, and neither should you. And whenever I tell people to boycott Netflix or pirate their stuff, these guys get extremely histrionic as if I was threatening to boil a litter of puppies in lava. These guys are more angry at me for boycotting Netflix and suggesting pirating their junk than they are at Netflix and the director of Cuties for promoting and endorsing child exploitation. That is an astronomical level of pathetic. All these people talk about how we should move on and forget about this, but given everything that's transpired since this movie was announced in August 2020, that is a very dangerous thing to do. Because do you think the people who defended Cuties are going to stop at Cuties? No, they won't. If they were really so hellbent in defending this movie, then they'd be willing to defend any other movie that does the same stuff. This movie feeds off of the growing number of people who think child exploitation is justifiable. And just like a lot of other things, it operates on a cycle. Kids are exploited, arguments over what is and isn't child exploitation move on to the next controversy. Child exploitation is not something that can be stopped with a movie. It is something that can only be stopped by taking drastic action. The people who defended this movie don't care about that. They just wanted attention by defending a CP movie. And given the severity of how out of hand this got, my guess is it certainly won't be the last time we see this. As long as Main Monodokue is allowed to roam free across the land after what she did in the making of this movie without being shot. And as long as the sickos who defended and tried to justify this vile are allowed to hold on to an online platform, this will not stop. It will happen again. There's gonna be another Main Monodokue, there's going to be another movie that films live children in a sexual manner, and there's going to be another tidal wave of sick animals who will try to justify this in the name of free speech or freedom of expression. Because all opinions are valid and need to be respected regardless of how wrong they are, apparently. Now, in spite of everything I've said throughout this video, I want to make it clear that I do not believe Tony is a child predator. Him defending Cuties doesn't automatically mean he's secretly plotting to groom someone. He is, however, a pedo enabler and a pedo apologist, because he still defended something that actively caters to them, along with everyone else who defended this movie. I was really hoping that over time something might have changed in these people, to realize that the movie was unjustified in what it featured on screen. It's no longer the heat of the moment, so now that they're not being influenced by the hysteria of late 2020, maybe they might have cleared their heads and realized what they did was wrong. But the thing is, they didn't. They're still defending this movie at a time when even Netflix doesn't want it on their servers anymore, and they're still trying to convince people that the outrage was just a result of reactionary Americans who don't understand foreign cultures, or don't want to face the uncomfortable truth of our society. Throughout this video, I've made a genuine effort to not start yelling and screaming like I did last time, but that's really hard to do when you're dealing with something this messed up. The clips that surfaced on Twitter when this movie first came out should have been more than enough. But the people who defended this movie just wanted to turn it into a stupid slap fight over different media opinions and being open-minded to different points of view, despite the very real reality that children were actually exploited in all this. It never once crossed their minds that this was something that could have easily been avoided, something that shouldn't have been made, and something that should be condemned and punished for. And they're still in that pathetic mindset that the controversy surrounding Cuties was all a matter of not being able to respect different opinions on a movie. This is why, while I'm not as verbally furious as I was when this first happened, I am much, much more unforgiving and judgmental of Tony and the rest of the sick freaks who defended this movie. Because in the 4 fucking years that this movie has been out, there was never a single doubt in their minds that they did anything wrong. They still believe that defending this movie is a moral thing to do, and that any backlash towards their stance on it is an attack on freedom of speech, and never once considered the fact that maybe there was a very specific reason people reacted to Cuties the way they did. I know a lot of people just know me as that guy who hates Disney Star Wars or The Last of Us Part 2, but this goes beyond the usual type of subject matter I cover on this platform. I've seen a lot, and I do mean a lot, of horrible attempts to defend and white knight the toxic media the industry has been putting out for the last 10 years. But to see actual pieces of human trash absorbing the existence of this thing, and all the horrifying implications surrounding it, and still having the absolute gall to say things like this, and this, it's evil. It is actually evil. Like, that has got to be the absolute lowest I have ever seen a subsection of people on the internet sink to in order to indulge themselves in their worthless virtue signaling in a desperate attempt to keep themselves from having even the slightest moment of self-reflection. To keep themselves from going, hey, you know what? Maybe it's wrong to like this particular piece of media because it's toxic and horrible and teaches fucked up morals and life lessons to its audience. Or maybe I shouldn't respect the people who happen to like it just because it's their opinion. Maybe I should treat them like a piece of dog shit that got stuck to my shoe because they're moronic asshats with horrible comprehension skills who don't deserve to be treated as if their opinion matters. In my original video covering this subject, when I told my audience to report all those YouTube channels, DeviantArt users, and Twitter accounts, I meant it, because the things they have said and done to justify this movie and any positive opinions of it is nothing short of disturbing. And I don't want to hear any garbage from anyone going, oh, you're crazy for wanting to deplatform all these people just because of their opinions on a stupid movie. No, it's not just because of their opinions on a stupid movie. The people who defended Cuties defended a federal crime that wants to normalize something profoundly evil, beyond any conceivable measure of excuse. They should be deplatformed for that. Because through their actions, they revealed for everyone to see that they're willing to downplay the severity of how Cuties sexually exploited 11-year-old girls just for the sake of boosting their ego. If you can't understand what's wrong with that, you shouldn't be allowed anywhere near children. These are evil, sick, twisted individuals who do not care at all about the freaks in our society trying to normalize child sexualization, as long as they get their instant gratification from a corporate product or think they're getting some sort of intellectual discussion on a work of fiction. This is a quote by Robert Heinlein that I think manages to sum up the situation perfectly. A generation which ignores history has no past and no future. If we just forget about the Cuties incident and quietly move on from it like nothing ever happened, it's going to lead to another incident like this in the future, then another, until we have created a society that is completely okay with this being normalized globally. That is exactly why the Cuties drama should never be forgotten. And it's also why Netflix and everyone who defended Cuties should never be forgiven.